party. And certainly going to Jeffreys was not about partying.
For a long time, those closest to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor have insisted the public story is incomplete. What people think they know, they say, is only a fraction of what unfolded behind palace doors. Not the whole truth, just the part that could be seen. Former staff and individuals who worked near him quietly repeat the same message. What has surfaced so far is only the first layer, the opening chapter of a much larger account that was never meant to leave the palace walls. Researchers who have spent years examining his life echo that belief. Again and again, they point out that the public narrative barely scratches the surface. Beneath it are years of moments, decisions, and behaviors discussed in whispers, shared privately among staff, never on record. Now, those whispers are beginning to escape the corridors where they were kept. And as they do, the story of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is starting to look far more complex and far more unsettling than anyone was originally told. Questions around Andrew's behavior are not new, but in recent years the scrutiny has become sharper and harder to control. Inside Buckingham Palace, the response was measured and deliberate. The hope was that distance would do what explanations could not. His public role was quietly reduced. Appearances became rare. Statements stopped. Interviews were avoided entirely. The strategy was simple: remove him from view, and the noise would fade on its own. For a while, the palace held its silence. But silence did not bring calm. Instead, it created space for speculation, for old stories to resurface, and for unanswered questions to grow louder. Even without Andrew in public sight, attention kept circling back to him, and with every attempt to look away, the focus only seemed to return stronger than before. Just days ago, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were seen together at their granddaughter's christening. It marked their first side-by-side public appearance since losing, their remaining royal titles and honors. There was no grand display, no staged smiles, and no moment designed for cameras. Everything was kept deliberately quiet, and yet, one detail stood out. After the ceremony, other members of the family headed to a nearby pub for a small informal celebration. Andrew and Sarah did not join them. Instead, they left early, without attention, without explanation. To many watching closely, that choice spoke volumes. Even within the private circle of the family, the old closeness no longer seems to exist. And once again, nothing was said, but everything was understood. That small detail added more fuel to the fire because it happened at the exact same time that old stories about Andrew's treatment of palace staff started coming up again. These are not stories from strangers or people looking for instant fame. Many came from workers who were there, who worked under him for years, and who remembered the smallest details. The claims talk about anger, shouting, and behavior that made people uncomfortable, including punishment-like routines that staff say they will never forget. Even people who served royalty for decades said some of Andrew's demands were unlike anything they had ever seen. A big part of the renewed attention comes from the book The Rise and Fall of the House of York, written by Andrew Leone. The author spent 4 years collecting stories, speaking to hundreds of people, searching for records, and looking for witnesses. Even after all that work, he says he reached only a fraction of those who had stories to share. Out of 3,000 people he tried to contact, only about 300 spoke to him directly. But even with that amount, the details were enough to shock the public. One of the most repeated claims in the book is about Andrew's strong need to show authority. Staff say he expected people to bow to him every time he entered a room. It was not enough to bow once during the day. It had to be done every time. And it had to be done correctly. If someone did not bow low enough or forgot at the wrong moment, he would reportedly stop, leave the room, come back, and wait for the bow again. The words he is said to have used were, "Let us try that again," which turned what should have been a greeting into a kind of performance. Workers who served him described this as something that felt less like respect and more like control. They say it was not playful, not lighthearted, and not a joke. It was expected. And when it was not done the right way, the atmosphere changed quickly. According to several accounts, Andrew's reaction to mistakes was sharp. Staff said he believed rules should be followed exactly, with no exceptions. When protocols were not carried out the way he wanted, his temper could rise very fast. The book even mentions arguments between him and Sarah Ferguson that were so heated that other people had to step between them more than once. The claims do not stop at shouting or raised voices. Workers shared memories that feel both strange and hard to forget. One man was reportedly removed from his role simply because Andrew did not like a mole on his face. Another staff member allegedly lost their job because their tie was made of nylon instead of silk. These decisions left many feeling that the rules were not about standards, but about personal taste and, most of all, power. Some of the daily tasks described by former staff sound almost unbelievable. For example, Andrew reportedly asked maids to walk up several flights of stairs every morning to open his bedroom curtains, even though he was perfectly able to open them himself. It was not about need, it was about the act of being served. Another story tells of Andrew calling a television technician late at night because he could not use his remote control. Highly trained police officers, meant for serious security duties, were allegedly asked to collect used golf balls or find company for him. These jobs were far from what they were trained for, but they did them because they felt they had no choice. The palace's reaction to these stories has raised questions of its own. When allegations about Meghan Markle's treatment of staff appeared in the press years ago, Buckingham Palace began a formal investigation almost immediately. But when similar or even stronger stories about Andrew floated in private circles, insiders say the palace prepared for complaints that never officially came forward. According to the book, there was real fear behind palace walls, that old stories of bullying and profanity would finally break through into the open. But they did not, at least not then. This difference in reactions continues to be noticed and discussed, especially by those who feel the treatment of the two situations was not equal. Today, Andrew's public position is weaker than ever. His royal titles are gone. His duties are gone. The trust once held in him has faded in many areas. Sources close to the royal household say King Charles has reached his limit, and there is little room left for mistakes. With the monarchy already under pressure from many sides, the last thing they want is more headlines linked to Andrew's past. Still, he has not disappeared completely. His appearance at the recent christening shows that he is still around, still connected to the family, still showing up in moments that should be simple, but become complicated because of his presence. Every time he is seen, the debate starts again. Can he ever return to public duties? Should he be allowed to? And if he does return, what would that say about the monarchy's values? Behind all of this, the emotional weight seems to fall hardest on Sarah Ferguson. People close to her say she is struggling with the constant attention, the public pressure, and the way her daughters keep being pulled into stories because of their father. Royal expert Phil Dampier has openly shared concerns that she is near a breakdown from everything happening around her. There is a feeling that the past keeps repeating itself, and that every time a new story appears, the same pain returns. Andrew and Sarah are said to believe they are being punished again and again for old mistakes. Their status is gone. Their reputation has been damaged for years, and yet new stories keep dragging them back into the center of attention. But from the palace's view, this is not about punishing anyone. It is about limiting the damage, protecting the institution, and trying to hold the trust of the public at a time when it already feels fragile. With holidays approaching every year and tensions rising, the royal family knows that even a single wrong step can cause long-lasting effects. This pressure has grown even tighter because of the reappearance of photographs showing Andrew with Jeffrey Epstein in private settings. These images are not new, but their resurfacing has reopened wounds that never fully healed. The expressions, the background, and the relaxed atmosphere in these photos remind many people of the questions that still have no clear answers. Andrew has always denied any wrongdoing, yet the photos continue to lead to anger, disbelief, and discomfort. For many members of the public, the photos do not stand alone anymore. They now sit beside the claims of shouting at staff, demanding bows, and punishing mistakes. When everything is looked at together, the picture feels heavier. Royal watchers say the heart of the issue is not just what was done, but how it connects to his attitude around power. When someone appears comfortable in places linked with serious crimes, and also seems to demand obedience behind closed doors, people start to connect the dots, fairly or not. In the press, the treatment of these images has changed. They once felt like old pieces of history, but today they are discussed as part of a larger story that will not go away. Experts say the public is no longer separating the Andrew seen smiling in private photographs from the Andrew described by former workers. Instead, many now recognize the same figure in every setting. A man accustomed to control, a man who expected obedience, a man who believed rules bent differently for him than for anyone else. That is why the questions facing the royal family now carry more weight than ever before. Does Andrew belong anywhere near royal duties again? Should King Charles draw a final, unmistakable line? And have these stories reached a point where silence is no longer an option? When claims, images, and long-held memories are placed side by side, the issue grows beyond titles or official positions. It becomes a question of behavior, of accountability, and of how those who served say they were treated when no cameras were present. And as long as former staff continue to speak, as long as photographs resurface, and as long as public trust remains unsettled, the story of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will not simply disappear. No matter how many doors close, how carefully traditions are repeated, or how often someone insists, "Let us try that again,"